I balanced the wine bottles against my hip as I nudged the heavy door open with my shoulder. The clink of glass against glass echoed louder than I expected, bouncing off the walls like a warning. The first thing I noticed was the silence, so complete, so jarring it made me stop in the threshold of the grand event hall I had rented 3 months in advance. My heels clicked against the polished marble as I walked in, eyes scanning the empty expanse. No chairs set up, no tablecloths, no flower arrangements, no catering staff bustling around in preparation. Just a cold, echoing void and my own reflection in the floor. At first, I thought I was early. But I wasn't. I checked the time. 6:47 p.m. The party was supposed to start at 7. I pulled out my phone, double-checked the email confirmation, the digital invitation I designed myself, the reminders I had sent to Mason's entire family. April 5th. Today. This day. This venue. So why was I standing alone? I tried calling Mason. He picked up on the third ring, and the moment I heard his voice, something twisted low in my stomach. "You okay?" he said lazily, like I'd interrupted a nap or a game. "I'm at the hall," I said carefully. "No one's here." There was a pause. Then a laugh. A deep, genuine laugh like I had just told him the punchline to a joke I didn't understand. "Clarissa," he said, dragging out the syllables, "that was yesterday." I stared at the far end of the hall, where I had imagined a head table draped in white and gold, a champagne tower, toasts. My mind tried to scramble together some rational explanation, some sliver of mistake that could still be undone. "No," I said slowly. "I sent out the invites. I confirmed everything. It's today." "Yeah, well, maybe you got confused," he said. "I mean, not like it mattered to anyone." "What does that mean?" Another voice came onto the line, sharp and unmistakably smug. "Oh, Clarissa," Beatrice crooned, "I told Mason not to bother you about the change. You're not really family anyway. Why waste your time?" My breath caught. I didn't respond. The line went dead. I stared at my screen, her words still ringing in my ears. Not really family. Like all the dinners I hosted, the birthday gifts I sent, the time I spent smoothing over their chaos meant nothing. Like I had just been playing house in someone else's lineage. I walked deeper into the hall, past the spot where the cake table should have been, past the spot where Mason's sister had begged me to install a selfie backdrop. I imagined the celebration happening without me yesterday. My wine bottles still hung at my side. I set them down gently on one of the bare tables and stared at them. The labels I had custom ordered still read The Rowan Family. Better together. Better without me, apparently. I walked out slowly, closing the hall door behind me with a soft click. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the wine bottles against the wall, though the image of red glass shattering across the marble gave me momentary satisfaction. No, I just walked to my car, sat behind the wheel, and stared ahead as the sun dropped low behind the buildings. The street lamp above flickered weakly, a moth dancing against its buzz. I sat there, motionless, my hands still resting on the steering wheel. Something was shifting. Something irreversible. I wasn't going to be the crying woman alone in her car tonight. No. That would be too easy. Too expected. I turned on my phone screen, scrolled through my contacts, and paused on a name I hadn't thought I'd need. Detective Elena Ruiz, Financial Crimes Division. Her name had been given to me months ago at a fundraiser for a women's business network. She spoke about economic abuse and how it often hides behind marriage, obligation, family. I saved her number because I felt something cold growing beneath my marriage then, even if I hadn't admitted it. Now I knew. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was exclusion by design. I tapped the number. It rang once, twice. Elena Ruiz, came the voice on the other end. My voice was calm. Detective Ruiz. This is Clarissa Hart. I think I finally understand what you were talking about. I'd like to make a report. There was silence for a moment, professional, patient silence, then a shift in her tone. "I'm listening," she said. and I started to talk. Not because I was ready, but because they had made it clear I wasn't really family to them, so I had nothing left to lose. I sat behind the wheel, the car engine off, the only sound the low hum of a nearby street lamp as it buzzed and flickered like it was on its last breath. I could still see the empty event hall in my rearview mirror, the place where I'd imagined laughter, music, maybe even a toast in my honor. Instead, it stood dark and still, an echo of what never was. I didn't cry. That surprised me. My hands were steady. My throat didn't close up. My heart didn't race. I just sat still and breathed. It was strange how clarity didn't always come in loud bursts. Sometimes it arrived in silence. In that moment under the flickering glow, something inside me stopped twisting itself into knots, trying to make sense of their actions. I didn't chase excuses anymore. I didn't wonder if I'd misunderstood. I didn't ask what I could have done differently. I saw the truth plain and brutal. They never saw me as one of them. I thought about every moment I had tried to earn my place. Every dinner I planned. Every crisis I helped smooth over. The time I paid Beatrice's mortgage when she forgot her auto-pay had lapsed. The check I gave Jared, Mason's brother, for his dream proposal ring. He never thanked me, but he did invite everyone else to the engagement dinner I wasn't told about. I even remembered baking gluten-free cupcakes for Celeste's ridiculous spa weekend and footing the bill when her card randomly declined. Thousands of dollars over the years, all chalked up to family generosity. And now, when I called them on what they'd done, Beatrice said it outright. "You're not really family." I gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles white, but not with rage, with focus. Mason had laughed. Like my confusion, my embarrassment, my ruined evening was funny. He didn't care that I'd walked into that empty hall alone. He didn't even try to soften the blow. Just laughed and said, "It was yesterday." And Beatrice? She hadn't even masked her cruelty. That was her power play. Her stamp of finality. I wasn't theirs. I never had been. They just used me. And now, they were done pretending. I unlocked my phone, opened my notes app, and began typing. Every incident. Every dollar. Every moment I'd swallowed a bitter taste and smiled through it. I made a new note. What they owe me. I started calculating in my head, spa weekends, mortgage payments, antique furniture for the family home, cash loans I'd been assured I'd get back. I had the receipts. I had the emails. I had screenshots. I just never saw the pattern until now. That's when I remembered her. Detective Elena Ruiz. I met her at a legal fund gala last year. She spoke on financial manipulation within families, how common it was, how often it was dismissed, because it wasn't bruises or broken bones. But it was real. It left women trapped, drained, and isolated. I remember her words so clearly now, like they'd been waiting in a quiet drawer in my mind. Just because they share your name or your dinner table doesn't mean they have the right to strip you bare. I had saved her number that night. Half on a whim, half on instinct. I pulled up her contact now. Her name stared back at me, Elena Ruiz, Financial Crimes Division. For a moment, I hesitated. Making that call would mean crossing a line. Turning this from a personal heartbreak into something official. Something with consequences. But hadn't they already made that choice for me? Beatrice. Mason. All of them. They had pushed me out, laughed behind my back, and drained me like I was a credit card without a limit. No more. I tapped her number and pressed call. She picked up quickly. Detective Ruiz. There was a strength in her voice, clipped and clear. It grounded me. I sat up straighter in the driver's seat. "My name is Clarissa Hart," I said, my voice even. "We met last year at a gala. You spoke about economic abuse within families." There was a pause, then her voice softened just slightly. "Yes, I remember. What's going on, Miss Hart?" I exhaled. "I need to report something. I have documentation. Financial transfers, purchases made in my name. Accounts I didn't authorize. It's my husband's family. They've taken advantage of me for years. Tonight, They left me standing alone in an empty event hall I paid for after hosting the real party without me. They made it clear I'm not family, just a source of money. Ruiz was quiet for a moment, not judgmental, not shocked, just assessing. Do you feel safe right now? She asked. Yes, I said. But I'm done pretending this is okay. I want to know what I can do. Good, she replied. That's the first step. If you can compile everything, bank records, receipts, communication, I can take a look. Financial abuse can be difficult to prove, but not impossible, especially if we establish a pattern. I already started a list, I said. And I think you'll see a very clear pattern. I believe you, she said. Email everything to me. And Clarissa? You're not alone in this. That simple sentence nearly broke me, but I held steady. I thanked her, hung up, and stared at the dark windshield, watching the reflection of the flickering streetlight on the glass. Not alone. It was the first time in years I felt that might be true. The moment I stepped back into the house, I didn't bother taking off my shoes. I walked straight to the office, turned on the desk lamp, and powered up my laptop. The familiar hum of the fan kicked in, and the soft glow of the screen bathed the room in pale blue. I didn't feel tired. I didn't feel anything, really. Just a strange sense of purpose, like I'd finally been handed the map to a place I'd wandered blindly for years. I opened my financial tracker, the one I started keeping not long after Mason and I merged our accounts. At first, it had been just a way to keep everything organized: monthly bills, income, shared expenses. But slowly, without realizing it, I had begun recording things that didn't sit right. Charges that felt off. Purchases that weren't mine. Quick favors for Mason's family that I kept hoping would stop piling up. Now I scrolled through the entries with fresh eyes. The last 6 months told the story better than any words could. I started writing notes in a separate document. $2,150, spa retreat, billed to my card, Celeste's name on the confirmation. $1,349, antique dresser for Beatrice's guest room, ordered from my account. $3,000, Jared's custom engagement ring, promised to be reimbursed. Never was. $786, catering for the Rowan family reunion last December. $600, emergency rent for Mason's cousin Lindsay. $350, flowers, decorations, and last-minute outfits for Beatrice's birthday. And that was just scratching the surface. I cross-referenced the receipts I had stored in my email, checking card numbers, delivery addresses, confirmation emails, all pointing back to me. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't poor communication. They had used me as a bank. A convenient, smiling wallet in heels. But the part that stung most? Mason knew. I found an old voice message saved on our home assistant system. I had ignored it before, thinking it was nothing. But now I replayed it with shaking fingers. His voice filtered through the speaker, low and annoyed. Just put it on Clarissa's card. She won't even notice. She thinks this is what family means. I paused it, stared at the waveform frozen mid-sentence. I pressed play again. The confirmation was clearer than any gut feeling. He knew. He knew, and he let it happen. No, he encouraged it. I scrolled back through my emails and found a message chain from Beatrice, the one where she insisted she'd take care of a payment for the decorator she hired for her anniversary party. That payment, I now saw, came from my business card. The bold confidence in her tone made my jaw tighten. They never thought I'd check. They never thought I'd question them. They assumed I'd keep smiling, keep paying, keep showing up like the good little outsider they could manipulate. Not anymore. I opened a folder on my desktop and began dragging in everything: PDFs of receipts, screenshots of texts, voice recordings, invoices with notes in Mason's handwriting. Then I paused, opened my banking app, and really looked. There, tucked away under a secondary account I barely used, I saw something that made my stomach drop. 3 credit cards listed under my name, none of which I remembered opening. I clicked through the details. All three were active. One was maxed out. The charges included home goods, electronics, and a series of hotel stays. My name, my credit, their mess. I pulled up the applications. The mailing address was our home. The email? A variation of mine, but off by one letter. Close enough to slip by unless you were really looking. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't dramatic. I had proof. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. For so long, I thought I was losing control of my finances, my identity, my voice. But they had been systematically siphoning everything they could from me. And I had let them because I believed I was building something real, something permanent. Now I knew the truth. I was the foundation, sure, but not for a life I chose. I was the scaffolding for theirs, the convenient support system they leaned on and took from without gratitude or thought. And when they were done, they simply shut the door, held the party without me, and told me I was never really one of them. I uploaded the folder to a cloud drive, created a backup, and labeled it Rowan Fraud Evidence. Then I sent a message to Detective Elena Ruiz. Subject: Documentation for report. Clarissa Hart. Body: Detective Ruiz. As discussed, I've compiled the evidence regarding financial abuse and unauthorized charges tied to my husband's family. Attached you'll find receipts, emails, audio, and a list of suspicious credit accounts opened in my name. Please confirm when received. Clarissa. I hit send. Then I stood up, stretched my arms, and stared out the office window into the night. The street was quiet, washed in the soft orange glow of porch lights and the occasional car passing by. The kind of night that usually made me feel small. But not now. Now I felt sharp. A blade that had finally been drawn after years spent dulled by guilt and obligation. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And this time, I wouldn't be the one cleaning up the mess. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. No alarm. Just clarity. The kind of clarity that settles into your bones after months, years of being kept in the dark. I sat up in bed and listened to the house. Quiet. Too quiet. Mason had slept on the couch again, citing late-night emails, but I knew better. We hadn't touched each other in weeks. Conversations were clipped, his affection diluted to the occasional pat on the back or a muttered goodnight. I didn't care anymore. Not about making it work. Not about salvaging anything. I slipped out of bed, pulled on my robe, and padded down the hallway to my home office. The soft blue glow of the computer screen welcomed me like an old friend. My desktop still had the folder sitting right in the center, Rowan Fraud Evidence. I clicked it open and scanned through everything again. Spreadsheets detailing the missing funds, screenshots of texts where Beatrice sweet-talked me into paying for things temporarily, audio clips of Mason casually instructing people to use my cards. And the credit card applications. God, those applications still made my stomach churn. The emails and documents tied to accounts I never opened, with balances I never knew I had. Last night, I had felt the fire. This morning, I moved with precision. I copied the folder to an encrypted flash drive and then uploaded everything to a cloud server. I wrote a second email to Detective Ruiz, this one short, direct, no frills. Subject: Final document package, confirm receipt. Body: Detective Ruiz. This folder contains the complete evidence package as discussed. I've included all relevant financial documents, communication screenshots, and confirmation of 3 fraudulent accounts opened under my name. Let me know if you need anything further. Regards, Clarissa Hart. I attached the link and clicked send. There was no anxiety, no second guessing, just a cool, deliberate calm. When I finished, I logged into our joint account, my name still tied to the account Mason used like his personal slush fund. I clicked through the transactions. Brunches I never attended, gas stations I never visited, hotel charges I didn't recognize. My jaw clenched. I froze the account with 2 clicks. And followed the prompt to send confirmation emails. Mason would wake up to a very different kind of morning. Then I moved on to the real task, my business accounts. Thankfully, my graphic design business had always remained somewhat separate. But Mason's name had been on a few linked files. For emergency access, he'd said. Just in case. This morning, just in case became absolutely not. I removed his access, updated passwords, and enabled two-factor authentication on every login. It felt like reclaiming air I hadn't realized I'd stopped breathing. Midway through reviewing my tax files, I caught something strange on a credit report I'd requested the night before. An address I didn't recognize. I searched it, and my mouth went dry. It was a P.O. box linked to one of the fake credit cards. I had never used a P.O. box in my life. I traced it back through a third-party billing system and found an alternate email address, one character off from mine, just like the others. I took screenshots of everything and added them to the cloud folder. I felt like I was peeling back layers of deception I had blindly lived under. And with every file, every uncovered charge, every shady paper trail, my resolve thickened. I picked up my phone and opened my text thread with Mason. I typed and deleted a few words before settling on the truth. Text to Mason. The joint account is frozen. Do not attempt to access my business funds. Any questions, direct them to your lawyer. I stared at it for a second before hitting send. Within seconds, the 3 dots appeared. Then stopped. Then started again. Mason. What the hell is going on? Are you serious right now? I didn't reply. He'd get his answer soon enough. I made myself a cup of tea and took it outside, sitting on the back porch with the sun finally rising over the fence. The yard was still, the flowers I planted last spring blooming without help, the wind shifting through the branches like a lullaby for a woman who no longer needed to sleepwalk through her life. Inside, my phone buzzed. It was an email alert from Elena Ruiz. Subject: Final document package. Body: Received. This is more than sufficient to begin formal inquiry. I've already flagged the fraudulent credit activity with our internal cyber division. Expect contact from one of our officers within 24 hours. Clarissa, you did everything right. Let's get to work. I stared at those words, "You did everything right," and felt something in me relax. A thread loosened that had been pulled tight for too long. I didn't need Mason's apology. I didn't need Beatrice's guilt or Celeste's excuses. What I needed was this: validation, forward motion, and the knowledge that for once, I wasn't going to clean up their mess. They were going to answer for it. Not just in whispers or slammed doors, but in documents, in courtrooms, in charges that would stick. I sipped my tea slowly, the warmth seeping into my fingers. This wasn't revenge. This was justice. And I had only just begun. The knock came just after 9 a.m. I was sitting at the kitchen counter, sipping the second half of a lukewarm cup of coffee, when I heard it, 3 firm, deliberate raps against the front door. Not the kind of knock that belonged to a neighbor borrowing sugar or a package delivery. No, this knock had weight behind it. Intention. I didn't move right away. I just looked toward the door, my heartbeat steady but alert. Mason was upstairs, probably still in bed after whatever he did last night. He hadn't said much when I froze the joint account, just angry grunts and muttering that I didn't bother decoding. But now it was time. I walked slowly to the door, barefoot, still in a soft t-shirt and leggings. I looked through the peephole. 2 officers stood there, flanked by a woman in a dark blazer and crisp slacks. Detective Elena Ruiz. Her presence was a quiet confirmation that this wasn't just a check-in. It was the beginning. I opened the door without a word. "Mrs. Hart?" Elena asked. "Yes, we're here to execute a warrant," she said calmly, "for Beatrice Rowan. Financial fraud and identity theft. Do you know if she's at home right now?" "She should be," I replied, voice even. "Beatrice lives 5 minutes away. Mason can give you the exact address." Behind me, footsteps thundered down the stairs. What the hell is going on? Mason barked as he rounded the corner, shirt half-buttoned, hair sticking up like he'd just rolled out of a nightmare. Elena turned toward him. "Mr. Rowan, we're investigating a case of financial misconduct tied to your family. We'll need a statement from you later today." His eyes snapped to me, and I saw it. That flicker of panic. The awareness that something he thought was safely hidden had been dragged into daylight. "Clarissa, what did you do?" I didn't flinch. I told the truth. The officers moved past us, one of them confirming Beatrice's address over the radio. Elena gave me a small nod, not quite a smile, but a gesture of assurance. And then, just like that, they were gone. The door clicked softly shut behind them, but the echo of their presence lingered. Mason stared at me like he didn't recognize who I was anymore. "You really called the cops on my mother?" "No," I said coolly. "I reported a series of crimes. Your mother just happens to be at the center of them." He stepped closer. "Do you realize what you've done? This will ruin everything." I tilted my head. "For who?" He didn't answer. I walked past him into the living room and sat down, flipping open my laptop as if this was just another Tuesday morning, which, in some ways, it was. Just a Tuesday where consequences had finally caught up with the people who'd dodged them for too long. He hovered in the doorway like he didn't know what to do with himself. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. Text from Elena. "Beatrice is in custody. We're bringing her in now. Also, Celeste reached out last night. She's agreed to cooperate. We've got copies of her texts with Mason. He referred to you as the wallet. I thought you should hear it from me first." I stared at the message. The wallet. That's what I had been reduced to in their eyes. Not a wife. Not a daughter-in-law. Not a person. Just a resource. I didn't cry. Not from heartbreak, anyway. If anything, I felt steadier than I had in weeks. Mason sat heavily on the armchair across from me, running both hands down his face like he was trying to rub the reality away. "You've really lost it," he said finally. "No," I said. "I finally found it." He looked up at me, brow furrowed. "Found what?" "My backbone." He didn't reply. Maybe because he knew that was true. Maybe because he realized there was no arguing with this version of me, the one who'd stopped waiting for apologies and started preparing for consequences. I stood up and walked into the kitchen, pulling out the flash drive with the full case folder. I held it up between two fingers. "This is going to the state attorney's office next," I said. "You might want to consider your options before they come back with your name on the paperwork." "You wouldn't." "I already did." His mouth opened like he had something to say, maybe a defense, maybe a plea, but nothing came out. And I didn't give him the chance. I walked upstairs and closed the bedroom door behind me. Not with a slam. Not with tears. Just with finality. This wasn't just about Beatrice. This wasn't just about the money. It was about every time I'd been made to feel like a guest in my own life. About every subtle dig, every manipulative request, every dollar handed over with a forced smile while they laughed behind my back. Now they could explain themselves to someone who didn't owe them kindness. And I was finally done explaining myself at all. The estate was as obnoxious as ever. Beatrice's sprawling brick mansion rose like some self-important fortress, its pristine hedges and marble fountains trying far too hard to prove something. The same iron gate that once made me feel small now felt like nothing more than a theatrical curtain. And today, I wasn't playing the supporting role in their twisted little family drama. I was the one holding the script. I stepped out of my car with the folder tucked neatly under my arm. Receipts, bank statements, transcripts of messages, photographs. Everything I needed, printed and ordered, sealed in an envelope labeled, "Return what you took." Not a demand. A warning. Mason was already standing outside the door when I arrived, arms crossed, face drawn. I hadn't spoken to him since Beatrice's arrest. We slept in the same house, but hadn't exchanged more than a few words. He looked tired, but I didn't care. Let him carry a fraction of what I had. He opened the door without a word and stepped aside as I walked in. The living room was full, Celeste perched on the edge of a chaise lounge like a sulking child, Jared pacing near the fireplace, and Beatrice, back from holding out on bail, sitting like a queen on her throne. Hair done, nails fresh, face smug. I didn't acknowledge any of them. I walked to the coffee table in the center of the room and placed the folder down slowly, deliberately, like I was delivering a final offer before the axe dropped. "I brought copies," I said, voice even. Beatrice tilted her head with that familiar air of contempt. "Oh, Clarissa, this performance is getting exhausting." "No performance," I replied. "Just numbers." She snorted, flicking her wrist. "You really think a few receipts are going to scare me?" I opened the folder and began laying out documents one by one, each receipt highlighted, each transaction annotated, each charge traced. Spa weekends, antique furniture, custom jewelry, all charged to my accounts. Some directly, some laundered through fake card applications. I have screenshots of you requesting reimbursements and never following through. I have Mason's voice giving Jared permission to put it on my card. I have Celeste's texts calling me the unlimited wallet. Celeste flinched. Mason shifted uncomfortably. And more importantly, I continued, pulling out the final document. "I have your second attempt at fraud. Using your deceased husband's social security number to open an insurance policy." I forwarded that to Detective Ruiz this morning. The room froze. Even Beatrice's practiced smirk faltered. "You're bluffing," she said, but her voice was thinner now. I looked at her, not with anger, not with fear, just exhaustion. "I already regret not doing this sooner. So no, I'm not bluffing." Jared sank into the armchair, his face pale. Celeste crossed her arms, but I saw the panic in her eyes. Beatrice stayed silent. "You have 1 week to pay me back in full," I said, sliding over the document listing the total owed, $11,847.63. "Otherwise, this folder, and all its digital backups, goes straight to civil court. Criminal charges are already being handled." Beatrice's mouth twitched. "You wouldn't dare." I cut her off. "You don't get to tell me what I would or wouldn't do anymore." Mason finally spoke, his voice quiet. "Clarissa, can we talk alone?" I didn't look at him. "We're already done talking." Celeste scoffed. "So this is what you want? To tear us all down?" I turned toward her. "No. I wanted to belong. I wanted to help. And for years, I did. You all took. You never gave. And when you didn't need me anymore, you humiliated me. You erased me." My gaze swept across the room. "I built your vacations, your parties, your debt relief. I gave up pieces of myself to be what you needed. But I'm done bleeding for people who laugh while they cut." Silence. I stood, gathered the folder, and slid it back into my bag. 1 week, I repeated, my tone final. Then I moved forward with or without your cooperation. Beatrice sat frozen, fury simmering beneath her glossy surface. Mason didn't say another word. He didn't stop me. None of them did. I turned and walked to the door, my heels clicking against the tile, echoing, sharp, unapologetic. When I stepped outside, the air hit me like a wave of freedom. Cold, clean, honest. I closed the door behind me without glancing back. As I got into my car, I allowed myself one small smile. It wasn't satisfaction. Not yet. But it was the first taste of control I'd had in a long, long time. And they knew it. They had 7 days to make this right. Or they'd learn, the hard way, what it meant to cross a woman who finally stopped begging to be included. The silence in the house had become its own kind of soundtrack, quiet, strained, hollow. I woke before the alarm again, not because I had anywhere to be, but because my mind had long since stopped allowing the luxury of deep sleep. I sat up, pushed the sheets away, and stared at the ceiling for a moment before I moved. There was no hesitation, no list of what-ifs circling in my brain. Just a to-do list, and today's task was simple: take back everything they took. I brewed a cup of coffee and watched it fill the mug like it was a ritual, grounding me. Then I walked straight to my desk, flipping open my laptop with a sense of purpose that had become second nature. My fingers moved fast, typing in passwords, checking balances, opening tabs. I logged into every account with my name on it: personal, business, savings, backup, then cross-referenced each with Mason's lingering access. Anything that had his name attached was immediately flagged. I opened the utilities portal next. Our water bill, electricity, internet, trash collection, all set to auto-deduct from my card. I smiled, humorless. Not anymore. I switched the payment methods on everyone, redirecting them to a new card in Mason's name, one he'd foolishly linked to the shared file drive months ago. He'd once told me it was so we could stay on top of household stuff together. I remembered how proud he'd been, like giving me access was some kind of gift. Today, it was just the key I needed. It felt surgical, what I was doing. Clean. Controlled. Every click another suture, stitching up what they'd left torn. I removed my name from subscriptions, monthly charges, accounts they used under the illusion that we were a team. I was never part of a team. I had been the resource. And resources, once aware, become very difficult to manipulate. An alert pinged from my private investigator, Charles, a quiet man with sharp eyes and no patience for sugarcoating. I'd hired him the day after Beatrice's arrest, needing someone who could dig where I couldn't. He had just uploaded a new document to our shared drive. Subject: fraudulent activity. Beatrice Rowan. Body: Clarissa. As requested, please find attached evidence that Beatrice attempted to reopen an insurance policy using her deceased husband's social security number. Policy flagged and denied. Digital trail preserved. I've forwarded this to Detective Ruiz. Charles. I opened the file and scanned it quickly, my stomach tight, but not surprised. A PDF of the application, IP addresses, timestamps. The gall of her. She was already out on bail, facing multiple charges, and still she couldn't resist trying one more scam. Her confidence had always come from knowing she could bury things with charm and manipulation. Not anymore. I forwarded the file to Elena without hesitation. Subject: additional evidence. Beatrice Rowan. Body: Elena. Attached is the latest from my investigator. Please confirm receipt. Let me know if I should expect a follow-up. Clarissa. I stared at the sent confirmation for a moment, then leaned back in my chair. There was no tremor in my hand, no second-guessing. I had become fluent in the language of boundaries, and I wasn't afraid to speak it. Mason hadn't said much since the sit-down. He had been quiet, pacing like a man waiting for a sentence to be handed down. He didn't know how to fix this, and I wasn't going to tell him how. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He just sulked, as if sulking could reverse time. It didn't. I wasn't the same woman he married, and I wouldn't pretend I was. I heard him coming down the stairs a few minutes later. I didn't turn when he entered the kitchen. He poured himself coffee in silence, then leaned against the counter. I saw the electric bill switched over, he muttered, as if it had snuck up on him. Yeah, I replied. They all did. He ran a hand through his hair. So that's it? You're just cutting everything off. I'm reclaiming what's mine, I said without looking at him. He scoffed under his breath. You're turning this into a war. I finally turned then, looked him dead in the eye. No, Mason. I'm ending one. He didn't reply. Just set the mug down too hard and left the room. His footsteps retreated up the stairs, but they didn't carry any authority. They sounded hollow, like someone walking in a house that no longer belonged to him. I spent the rest of the morning reviewing my legal documents, calling the bank to finalize changes, and updating passwords on every device, app, and tool I used to build the life they tried to steal piece by piece. Then I opened a spreadsheet labeled Recovery Plan and made a new tab. Phase 2. Freedom. It was finally mine to build. No ghosts whispering that I owed them. No smirking in-laws cashing checks behind my back. No husband wringing his hands while pretending he wasn't complicit. Just facts. Numbers. And a woman who finally remembered her own worth. Justice wasn't always loud. Sometimes, it was a quiet transfer of a utility bill. And in that silence, I found power. The text came in at 4:12 p.m. Mason. Family dinner. 6 p.m. Beatrice wants to talk. You should come. I stared at it for a moment, letting the words sink in not because they surprised me, but because of how little they affected me. 2 weeks ago, a message like that might have unraveled me. I would have agonized over what they meant by talk, what tone Beatrice would take, whether Mason was extending an olive branch or another baited trap. But today it read like background noise. Like a notification I didn't need to answer. I didn't respond right away. Instead, I put my phone down and turned back to the sauce bubbling on the stove. The smell of garlic and butter filled the air, warm and grounding. I was making dinner for me, just me, and it was exactly what I wanted. No chafing dishes, no centerpieces, no folding chairs arranged for a family that couldn't be bothered to see me as one of their own. Just my favorite recipe, a chilled glass of white wine, and music playing softly in the background. After stirring the pasta, I finally picked up my phone again. Me. Not coming. I didn't elaborate. No need to. They'd spent years assuming I owed them explanations, apologies, clarifications for things they themselves had broken. I wasn't doing that anymore. Not coming was the only answer they'd get. I imagined Beatrice reading the message, mouth tight, eyes narrowed. She wasn't used to being told no. Especially not by me. She'd probably spent the day staging the dining room just so, getting the help to set out the good china, arranging whatever hollow performance she had planned to save face. Maybe Mason thought this dinner would change something. Maybe he thought I'd show up, sit quietly, and let them talk circles around what they did. But I'd already said everything that needed to be said. I drained the pasta, added it to the pan, and finished the sauce with a splash of cream. As the scent rose up, comforting and rich, I felt a lightness I hadn't known in years. I plated my meal, poured myself a second glass of wine, and carried it to the dining room. My table, just one place set, linen napkin folded with care, candle flickering softly. No chatter, no judgmental glances, no passive-aggressive jabs wrapped in thin smiles. It was quiet, peaceful, honest. I took a bite and closed my eyes. I wasn't just feeding myself tonight. I was honoring myself. Choosing myself. After years of pretending, placating, giving, I was finally sitting at a table that didn't require me to prove my worth to be invited. Halfway through the meal, I picked up my phone and opened the donation site I'd bookmarked days ago. A women's shelter just across town, one that supported survivors of financial abuse, helped them rebuild credit, find housing, access legal support. I had called them anonymously the week before, just to ask what they needed most. Their answer had been simple: grocery gift cards, transportation funds, emergency grants for women who had nothing but the clothes on their backs. I clicked the donate button. Amount: $5,000. Message: in honor of all the dinners I paid for that meant nothing. Let this one change something. The confirmation popped up on my screen, and for the first time in a long time, I felt full. Not just from the food or the wine, but from the clarity of a choice made entirely on my terms. I thought back to the reunion budget, balloons, catered food, venue deposits. All planned and paid for by me, and none of it acknowledged. That budget had once made me feel like I was building bridges. Now I saw them for what they were: chains. So I repurposed it. Every dollar now went towards something real. Something worthy. Another message buzzed through. Mason. Beatrice wants to know if we can talk privately later. I didn't reply. I finished my meal slowly, washed the dishes, and lit a candle in the living room. I curled up on the couch with a book I'd been meaning to read for months and let the quiet stretch around me like a warm blanket. At 6:15, I imagined the family dinner starting without me. Beatrice probably making some grand statement, Celeste rolling her eyes, Jared asking what takeout they'd end up ordering instead of the catered meal that never arrived. Mason looking at the empty seat like it was a mistake. But it wasn't a mistake. It was a boundary. A very intentional one. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to retaliate. All I had to do was say no and mean it. That was the kind of power they didn't understand. And the kind I wasn't letting go of ever again. The bank was quiet, eerily so, from Monday afternoon. The marble floors and high ceilings seemed to absorb every sound, making the shuffle of papers and the occasional ringing phone feel miles away. I sat in the small, glass-walled office with my hands folded in my lap, waiting. Across the desk, the financial advisor glanced at his screen, confirming the details of the joint account Mason and I had opened 3 years ago. The same account he had slowly poisoned with entitlement and deceit. Mason walked in 5 minutes late, wearing the same gray blazer he always wore when he wanted to look competent. His expression was carefully blank, but I saw the tightness in his jaw. He was trying to figure out how to play this. Was he going to pretend to be apologetic? Indignant? Hurt? Clarissa, he said with a shallow nod as he sat. I didn't respond. The advisor cleared his throat. Thank you both for coming. As requested, today we'll be finalizing the closure of your joint checking and savings accounts. Each of you will walk away with an equal share of the remaining funds, and once the paperwork is signed, neither party will have access to the other's information. Fine, Mason muttered, rubbing a hand across the back of his neck. I reached into my bag and pulled out my ID, sliding it across the desk. Let's begin. As the advisor got to work, I studied Mason. There was a time when I would have done anything to understand what he was thinking, where his mind was, if there was something I'd missed. But today, I realized I didn't care. Not because I hated him, but because he simply didn't matter anymore. His opinion, his regret, his excuses, none of it held power over me. He glanced at me a few times, probably expecting me to look sad, or to ask if we could talk. Instead, I kept my gaze steady on the forms. When the advisor left the room momentarily to get the final authorization, Mason leaned forward, his voice low. So this is it? I met his eyes. Yes. You really think we were never family? I tilted my head slightly, studying him like he was a stranger asking me for directions. You don't ask someone to be part of your family, I said, and then laugh when they show up to an empty room. You don't steal from them. You don't make them feel like an outsider and then act shocked when they walk away. His jaw clenched. I didn't know everything they were doing, but you knew enough, I replied, my voice calm, and you chose to do nothing. Or worse, you encouraged it. He sat back, defeated. So what now? You just go off and start over. I smiled, slow and deliberate. Exactly. He shook his head, scoffing. Guess we were never really family. There it was again. That bitter little phrase they all love to toss around, like it would somehow cut me. I leaned forward, my eyes locked on his. No. You were a debt I finally cleared. He blinked, caught off guard. He opened his mouth, then closed it. There was nothing left to say. The advisor returned with a folder and handed it to me. Here's your new debit card. You're all set. It's now under your name only, Clarissa Hart. I took it and ran my thumb across the raised letters. It felt heavier than I expected. Not in weight, but in meaning. There was no Rowan attached. No shared responsibilities. No open doors for them to slip through. Just me, Clarissa Hart. The advisor handed Mason his card, then passed us both copies of the account closure forms. I signed mine without hesitation. Mason hesitated for a moment, then scribbled his signature. It's done, the advisor said, standing. You're officially separated. I stood too, smoothing down my blazer. Thank you. Mason stayed seated, as if waiting for something, an apology, a last-second reversal, a parting gift of comfort. I gave him nothing. I walked out of the bank with my head high, the new card tucked safely in my wallet, and the weight of them falling off me with every step. I didn't cry. I didn't look back. I just stepped into the sunlit parking lot and breathed. The final tie was cut. No more shared finances. No more gaslighting. No more debts disguised as favors. No more Clarissa the wallet. Just me, my name, my choices. I sat in my car for a moment before starting the engine, letting the silence wrap around me. But this silence wasn't empty. It was full of promise, of clarity, of the woman I had found beneath the ruin. Clarissa Hart. I said the name out loud, just to hear it echo. And for the first time in years, it sounded whole. The sun streamed through the windows of my new apartment, soft and golden, warming the hardwood floors that still smelled faintly of polish. A small breeze slipped through the cracked balcony door, rustling the papers on my desk. My plants, new ones I chose for myself, leaned lazily toward the light. I sat cross-legged on the couch with a cup of tea cupped between my hands, watching the steam curl toward the ceiling as I let the quiet settle. Not an empty quiet. A chosen one. A free one. My phone buzzed once on the table. A message from Detective Elena Ruiz. Elena. Plea deal confirmed. Beatrice has agreed to full restitution in exchange for a reduced sentence. Final repayment will be processed within the week. Also, your file's being used as a training model for new financial abuse cases. You helped more than just yourself. I let that sink in. The final repayment was on its way. Not just the money, though that mattered, but the closure. The recognition that what they did was real. That what I felt all along wasn't paranoia or pettiness. It was survival. And now, I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. I looked around the apartment. Small, quiet, mine. The walls were bare still, but they didn't feel unfinished. They felt ready. I had brought only what I loved here. No remnants of the Rowans. No framed family photos I wasn't part of. No dinnerware I'd bought for parties I wasn't invited to. Just the essentials, the intentional, the peaceful. Near the kitchen sat a slim folder, the first draft of a legal fund I was creating. It was nothing huge, not yet, but it was real. A start. I'd reached out to the same shelter I had donated to weeks ago. We were collaborating now, building a program specifically for women recovering from financial abuse, offering not just grants, but guidance, legal referrals, credit rebuilding, empowerment that came with tools, not just sympathy. That folder was the beginning of something I wished I'd had. And now, someone else would. I stood, walked to the desk, and slid open the top drawer. Inside were the last pieces of the life I had walked away from, my old debit card, a few letters from Mason's family I hadn't bothered to open, and a bracelet Beatrice had given me the first year I married into their name. At the time, it felt like acceptance. Now I saw it for what it was, a leash disguised in gold. I closed the drawer and locked it. Then I opened my laptop and scrolled through my blocked numbers list. Every single Rowan number was there. I stared at Mason's name for a second, the last trace of what used to feel like love. He hadn't called in weeks, not since the bank. I imagined he was still waiting for me to break the silence, to leave a crack in the door he could slip through. But the door wasn't just closed. It had been removed entirely. I clicked delete contact. Not blocked. Deleted. Gone. I didn't need to revisit his name every time I scrolled. I didn't need to remember him. He was part of a chapter that had already ended. Now it was just me and the blank pages ahead. Later that afternoon, I walked to the nearby bookstore, the one on the corner with creaky wooden floors and mismatched chairs tucked between shelves. I'd passed it a dozen times during the move and finally let myself step inside. The smell of old paper and possibility welcomed me like an old friend. I wandered the aisles slowly, trailing my fingers along the spines. I wasn't in a rush. That was new. At the register, the clerk, a woman with a soft voice and kind eyes, smiled at me. "First time here?" she asked. I nodded. "Just moved to the neighborhood." She slid my book into a paper bag. "Then welcome. You're going to like it here." I smiled back, surprised at how warm those words felt. I walked back to my apartment with the bag tucked under my arm, the air crisp, the world oddly open again. Back home, I made dinner for one. I ate on the balcony, looking out at the quiet street, the city breathing around me. No beeping phones. No fake smiles. No conversations where I had to earn the right to speak. Just peace. I thought about who I used to be, the woman standing alone in that empty hall, holding wine bottles for a party she'd never been meant to attend. I honored her. I mourned her. And then I let her rest. Because she had brought me here. Because she had been brave enough to see the truth, to step into the fire, and to walk away not burned, but awakened. I washed my plate, turned off the lights, and slipped into bed with the window cracked open and the moonlight spilling across the sheets. I was no longer someone's wife. No longer someone's daughter-in-law. No longer a prop in someone else's show. I was Clarissa Hart. And, for the first time, that was more than enough.